The Galactic Games were a spectacle watched by trillions across the known universe. It was the ultimate test of military strategy, strength, and technological superiority. Every major empire, federation, and warrior race sent their best fleets to compete. For centuries, only the strongest had ever claimed victory. No one had expected Earth to even participate, let alone pose a challenge. When the small, outdated human fleet entered the competition, the galaxy laughed. Commander Elias Carter stood on the bridge of the horizon, the flagship of Earth's modest fleet. The command center was quiet, the crew tense but focused. They had all heard the mockery from the Galactic Council, the sneers of alien admirals who saw humanity as nothing more than a minor species, unworthy of competing against the finest warriors in the galaxy. But Carter and his team knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. Brute force wasn't everything. The games were held in a massive, uncharted region of deep space. Artificial planets, asteroid fields, and debris clouds were spread across the battlefield, creating a war zone where strategy mattered just as much as firepower. The opening phase was simple: last fleet standing wins. As the timer counted down to the start, Carter watched the enemy fleets on his tactical display. The Valoran Empire, the Kruzeri warlords, the Coalition of Prime, and several other dominant forces had formed loose alliances, all planning to eliminate the weaker fleets first. Earth was their primary target. They weren't even trying to hide it. A dozen enemy ships had already repositioned themselves toward the human fleet before the match even began. Carter smirked. Let them come. The countdown hit 0. The games had begun. Within seconds, the massive warships of the Valoran Empire surged forward, their heavy cannons charging. The Kruzeri warlords flanked from the side, their agile attack cruisers moving in a tight formation, preparing to crush Earth's fleet before they could react. The galactic audience watched eagerly, expecting an instant defeat. But then, the human fleet vanished. Gasps and confused murmurs filled the command decks of every major fleet. In the control rooms of the Galactic Council, high-ranking officials leaned forward, their amusement turning into confusion. The human ships had disappeared from enemy sensors, vanishing into the darkness of space, as if they had never existed. Admiral Jurex of the Valoran Empire growled, his reptilian eyes narrowing at his display. Impossible. They were right there. They're using stealth fields. A Kruzeri commander barked. No, their ships are too primitive for that tech, another officer muttered. But Carter and his crew knew exactly what they were doing. It wasn't advanced technology, it was tactics. While the enemy had relied on brute force and superior firepower, Earth had relied on misdirection. Using a combination of sensor jamming, decoy beacons, and the natural cover of the battlefield, Earth's fleet had slipped away into the thick asteroid field, vanishing from enemy sight. But they weren't hiding. They were waiting. The Valoran and Kruzeri fleets charged into the area where the humans had last been seen. They fired blindly, unleashing massive energy blasts that tore through empty space. Their ships moved aggressively, searching for their prey. They expected the humans to be running, desperate to escape. Instead, Earth's fleet struck first. From the shadows of the asteroid field, 3 human destroyers ambushed a Kruzeri battlecruiser, disabling its engines with precision railgun strikes. The massive alien warship spun out of control, crashing into a nearby asteroid in a fiery explosion. The audience watching across the galaxy fell silent. No truce, he said. The feline officer's eyes widened. You would refuse peace. This isn't peace, Carter said. This is you trying to run away so you can come back later. The reptilian commander hissed. You can't seriously intend to execute us. Carter didn't blink. Watch me. For the first time, fear truly settled into their expressions. Carter stood up from his chair. Here's how this is going to work. You will order all remaining coalition ships to surrender. Completely. No conditions, no retreat. Your officers will stand down, and your weapons will remain offline. Then, You will call your superiors and tell them exactly what happened here today." The feline commander's tail flicked anxiously. "And if we refuse?" Carter tilted his head. "Then I'll turn your fleet into debris." Silence. The reptilian commander looked around at his fellow officers. He could see the truth. They had no choice. Slowly, reluctantly, he pressed a command on his console. Across the battlefield, coalition ships began broadcasting their unconditional surrender. Patel let out a breath. "It's done." Carter nodded. Step 1 was complete. Now came the real challenge, making sure the coalition never tried this again. The coalition's surrender was official. Their warships floated lifeless in the void, their captains subdued, their crews silent. Earth's fleet had done the impossible. They had outwitted, outmaneuvered, and outplayed the most powerful armada in the galaxy. But Carter knew one thing for certain. This war wasn't over. Not yet. "Sir," Patel said, her voice tight, "the coalition's high command is requesting a direct communication." Carter exhaled slowly. "They finally decided to talk, huh?" Patel nodded. "We intercepted transmissions. The surrender orders have already reached their leadership. They know they've lost this battle." Carter smirked. "Let's see if they know they've lost the war." A new hologram flickered to life on the bridge. Unlike the battlefield captains, the alien appearing before them was royalty. High Executor Malvash, the supreme leader of the coalition. His deep crimson robes shimmered under the light of his throne room, but his eyes, dark, calculating, betrayed his calm expression. "Commander Carter," Malvash's voice was smooth, deliberate. "I must admit, I did not expect to be speaking with you under these circumstances." Carter leaned back in his chair. "Yeah, well, I didn't expect to be standing over a fleet of surrendered warships either. Life's funny like that." Malvash's lips curled slightly, though there was no humor in his expression. "You must know that your victory here is temporary. The coalition is vast. We have resources beyond your imagination. And revenge," he said, voice lowering, "is a certainty." Carter's fingers tapped lightly against the console. "You're not the first dictator to make threats after losing a fight. Won't be the last." Malvash's eyes narrowed. "Do not mistake this setback for defeat." Carter's smile didn't fade. "Oh, I don't. In fact, I've been thinking ahead." Patel and Kim exchanged glances. This was the moment Carter had been waiting for. He straightened in his seat. "Here's what's going to happen, Malvash. Your fleet here, it's done. Captured, crippled, out of the fight. But I know you. You'll send another armada. A bigger one. And when that happens, you'll throw even more lives into the fire just to prove you're still in charge." Malvash's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "So I've decided to make things easier for you," Carter continued. His voice was calm, measured, dangerous. He tapped another button on his console. Across the battlefield, Earth's remaining warships powered up their weapons. Malvash's gaze flickered. "What are you doing?" Carter's eyes were cold. "Teaching you a lesson." One by one, the disabled coalition warships began to explode. Earth's fleet fired with surgical precision. They didn't waste ammunition, didn't unleash unnecessary destruction. They simply eliminated ship after ship, reducing them to burning wreckage. Malvash's composed mask finally cracked. "Stop this madness. They are prisoners of war." Carter tilted his head. "You didn't treat us like prisoners when you tried to exterminate us. Consider this our response." Another ship detonated, then another. Malvash growled in frustration. "This will only fuel the coalition's desire for vengeance." Vela's eyes narrowed. "Call it mutual benefit. The Valoran are collapsing, but the Krizeri remain a threat. We eliminate them first, then we settle things between us." Carter weighed his options. The Krizeri were brutal, relentless warriors. If they were allowed to regroup, they could turn the tide of the battle. But trusting the coalition was like making a deal with a venomous snake. Still, he needed time. "Fine," he said, But if you turn on us before the Cruiseri are dealt with, I'll make sure your fleet burns with them." Vela let out a quiet chuckle, spoken like a true predator. The transmission cut off. Carter turned to his crew. "You heard her. We take out the Cruiseri. But be ready. The second the coalition doesn't need us, they'll stab us in the back." The Cruiseri warlords, realizing they were now the primary target, shifted their tactics. Instead of holding their formation, they launched a reckless, all-out charge. Massive, claw-like warships surged forward, their plasma cannons firing in every direction. They weren't trying to win through strategy. They were trying to break through sheer brute force. The coalition fleet met them head-on, engaging in brutal close-quarters combat. But the Cruiseri were stronger. For every one of their ships that fell, they took down 2 with them. Carter's instincts screamed at him. This wasn't just desperation. "Lieutenant Kim, scan the Cruiseri flagship," he ordered. Kim's hands flew over the console. A moment later, her face went pale. "Sir, their main reactor is destabilizing." Carter's blood ran cold. "They're going to blow their flagship," he realized. "They want to take out as many of us as possible." It was a classic Cruiseri tactic. If they couldn't win, they'd make sure their enemies lost too. "All ships, EVAs IV main UVers, get CLER of DE last radius." But it was too late. The Cruiseri flagship detonated. A massive shockwave ripped through the battlefield, vaporizing nearby ships instantly. Coalition vessels were torn apart. Even Earth's fleet, positioned further back, felt the impact. Several ships lost power, their systems fried by the blast. The battlefield went silent. Where the Cruiseri fleet once stood, only wreckage remained. Carter gritted his teeth. It was a victory, but a costly one. And now, only 2 factions remained: Earth and the Coalition. The final battle was about to begin. The battlefield was eerily quiet in the aftermath of the Cruiseri's suicidal attack. Smoke and debris drifted through the void, the remnants of warships now reduced to floating wreckage. Earth's fleet had taken damage, but they were still standing. The Coalition, though battered, was in better shape. And now, there was only one enemy left. Carter's fingers gripped the armrest of his command chair as he watched the tactical display. The moment of betrayal was coming. He knew the Coalition would never honor an alliance longer than necessary. "Sir," Patel spoke up, her voice tense. "Coalition ships are repositioning. Their formation is shifting. Offensive stance." Carter exhaled slowly. "Of course it is." Admiral Vela's hologram flickered to life. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a quiet smugness in her silver eyes. "Commander Carter," she said smoothly, "a remarkable battle. Your people have proven themselves resourceful." Carter leaned forward. "Cut to the chase, Vela. Are we finishing this fight, or do you want to pretend there's still an alliance?" Vela let out a soft chuckle. "Direct as always. I'll be equally direct. You are outnumbered, outgunned, and damaged from the previous battle. Surrender now. I will allow your forces to live as subjects of the Coalition." A murmur spread across the bridge. Patel's hands clenched into fists. Kim muttered a curse under her breath. Surrender was not an option. Carter smiled. A slow, knowing smile. "That's an interesting offer," he said. "And if I were in your position, I'd make the same demand." Vela's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing something was off. "But there's just one problem," Carter continued. "You don't have as much control over this battlefield as you think." Vela's expression darkened. "Explain." The stars stretched out before them, vast and endless. The wreckage of the once mighty Coalition fleet drifted lifelessly in the void, a stark reminder of what had happened here. But Carter knew this was only the beginning. On the bridge of the Ulysses, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. Patel was coordinating fleet movements, Kim was scanning deep space channels, and the rest of the officers waited for orders. They had won the battle, but now came the war. A ping echoed through the comms. Kim looked up sharply. "Sir, incoming transmission. It's not from the Coalition." Carter raised a brow. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, and an alien face appeared. Not Malvash, not a Coalition officer, someone else. The being was reptilian, its scales a deep blue-green, and its eyes were sharp with intelligence. When it spoke, its voice carried a sense of wary respect. "Commander Carter of Earth, I am Lord Varish of the Zindari Dominion." Carter leaned back in his chair. The Zindari. A neutral power in the galactic balance, until now. Varish continued. "We have observed your battle. We have listened to your message, and we have come to a decision." Carter glanced at Patel, who was already pulling up information on the Zindari. A powerful race, technologically advanced, but cautious. They had never openly opposed the Coalition, but they had never allied with them either. "Go on," Carter said, keeping his tone neutral. Varish's gaze flickered. "The Coalition has long held dominance over the stars. They believe themselves untouchable. You have shattered that illusion. And now, others are watching." Carter said nothing, letting the alien continue. "The Zindari do not seek war," Varish said carefully. "But we also do not serve tyrants. If the Coalition falls, we would prefer to have allies among the stars." Patel's eyes widened slightly. Kim's fingers hovered over her console, waiting. Carter let the silence stretch for a moment, then smiled. "Are you saying what I think you're saying, Lord Varish?" Varish exhaled. "The Dominion will not stand against you. If war comes, we may even lend our assistance." A slow grin spread across Carter's face. This was it. The first crack in the Coalition's hold over the galaxy. "Glad to hear it," he said smoothly. "We'll be in touch." The transmission cut, and Patel let out a low whistle. "Sir, this changes everything." Carter nodded. "It does. Because now, Earth wasn't just fighting to survive. They were gathering allies. They were turning the tables." Kim spoke up, her voice filled with new urgency. "Sir, we're picking up more signals. Multiple factions, some offering to talk, some just watching." Carter smirked. "Let them watch." The Coalition had ruled through fear for too long. They had crushed countless worlds, believing no one would ever stand against them. But now, the galaxy had seen the impossible. Earth's underdogs had outsmarted the finest warriors the stars had to offer. And Carter knew exactly what was coming next. He stood, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Prepare the fleet. We're not waiting for them to attack again." Patel grinned. "Where to, sir?" Carter turned his gaze toward the distant stars. "Straight into the heart of the Coalition," he said. And with that, Earth's ships turned, their engines roaring to life. The hunted had become the hunters, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Another enemy ship, a Valoran dreadnought, turned its cannons toward the asteroid field, ready to unleash a barrage. But before it could fire, a human corvette slipped underneath, planting a series of magnetic charges. Seconds later, boom! The Valoran warship erupted from within, torn apart by explosions that crippled its entire hull. Admiral Jrex slammed his fist on the control panel. "They're not running. They're hunting us." Panic rippled through the enemy ranks. They had underestimated the humans. Gravely, the small, weak fleet wasn't engaging in direct combat. It was using speed, intelligence, and deception to strike from the shadows, eliminating targets one by one while never staying in one place for too long. For the first time in centuries, the underdogs were in control. Carter watched the battle unfold with cold precision. His officers worked like a single mind, coordinating maneuvers that confused and overwhelmed the enemy. He could already see it happening. The Valoran and Cruiseri commanders were growing desperate, their formations falling apart as they scrambled to defend against an enemy they couldn't even find. "They'll start getting reckless soon," Carter said. "That's when we strike hard." On the galactic broadcast, commentators struggled to make sense of what was happening. The humans were supposed to be crushed in the first few minutes. Instead, two of the galaxy's most powerful fleets were already bleeding. The Galactic Council, once laughing at Earth's participation, now watched in uneasy silence. The other competing factions took notice. The Coalition of Prime, a federation of highly advanced strategists, pulled their fleets back, reassessing the humans as a threat. The Varn Dominion, known for their cyber warfare, began deploying electronic countermeasures, trying to crack Earth's tactics. But Carter had planned for this. The enemy was reacting exactly as he predicted. Then, an urgent alarm blared across the horizon's command deck. Incoming hyperspace signatures. Carter's gaze sharpened. The rest of the Valoran and Cruiseri fleets were arriving. What was supposed to be a simple elimination of Earth's forces had turned into a full-scale operation. More warships, carriers, and strike cruisers emerged from hyperspace, forming a blockade around the battlefield. They weren't just going to fight the humans now. They were going to erase them. Carter exhaled slowly. Looks like they're finally taking us seriously. His crew tensed. The odds were growing worse. Earth's fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. The galactic audience leaned forward in anticipation. Would the underdogs finally fall? Or had the galaxy just made a fatal mistake? The battlefield was shifting. Earth's fleet had drawn first blood, but now they were trapped. The arrival of reinforcements meant that the enemy fleets had fully committed to eliminating them. No more games, no more arrogance. The galaxy's finest had recognized the humans as a serious threat. The horizon shook violently as an enemy dreadnought unleashed a barrage of plasma fire. Shields flared, absorbing the impact, but the energy readings on Carter's display showed the bad news. They couldn't take many more direct hits like that. Damage report, Carter barked. Shields at 60%. Holding, but they won't last long under sustained fire. Lieutenant Paddle responded, her fingers dancing across the console. Carter narrowed his eyes at the tactical display. The Valoran and Cruiseri fleets had tightened their formation, cutting off every possible escape route. The asteroid field, which had given Earth's fleet an early advantage, was now a death trap. The enemy was closing in, determined to crush the underdogs before they could strike again. For any other fleet, this would be the end. But Carter had been planning for this from the beginning. They weren't going to run. They were going to outthink the enemy. "Commander, we have movement," Ensign Ortiz called out. "Looks like the Coalition of Prime is repositioning their fleet. They're holding back, watching us." Carter's lips curled into a smirk. The coalition was made up of tactical geniuses, the best strategic minds in the galaxy. They had avoided combat so far, analyzing every move. They weren't going to waste resources fighting a losing battle, unless they saw an advantage. Carter had to give them a reason to join in. He turned to his weapons officer. "Arm the decoy drones. Full signal amplification. I want them to mimic capital ship signatures." Lieutenant Kim blinked. "Sir, if we do that, the enemy will think we have reinforcements coming." Carter's smirk widened. "Exactly." The crew worked fast. Within seconds, a dozen drones launched from Earth's ships, scattering in all directions. Each one was broadcasting a powerful signal, mimicking the energy signatures of massive human warships. To anyone scanning the battlefield, it would look like an entire second wave of Earth's fleet was arriving. The reaction was immediate. Enemy ships hesitated. Confusion rippled through the Valoran ranks. The Cruiseri warlords, notorious for their aggression, faltered as their commanders demanded answers. Even the Galactic Council's spectators were thrown into chaos. More human ships. An alien commentator gasped. "But that's impossible. Their fleet was too small." The deception was working, but Carter wasn't done. "Bring up the open comms channel," he ordered. Lieutenant Patel nodded. A soft beep signaled that Carter was now broadcasting to every fleet in the game. "This is Commander Elias Carter of the United Earth Fleet," he said, his voice steady. We gave you all a chance to leave the battlefield in one piece. You ignored it. Now our reinforcements are arriving, and you're out of time. Your smartest move is to stand down." Silence followed. Then chaos erupted. The coalition of Prime's admiral, a cold and calculating strategist named Vela, was the first to respond. Her fleet had been waiting for a reason to act. And now, they had one. "Valoran Command, is this true?" Her voice crackled over the comms. We are verifying." Admiral Drex replied, but there was doubt in his tone. His forces were already on the defensive. If another human fleet was truly inbound, their odds of victory had just plummeted. That moment of hesitation was all Carter needed. All ships, attack pattern Delta. Earth's fleet struck with brutal precision. While the enemy was busy scrambling for answers, the human ships slipped through their weak points, unleashing devastating volleys of high-speed railgun fire. A Cruiseri warship took a direct hit to its reactor. It exploded in a blinding fireball. A Valoran battleship, caught off guard, suffered a series of coordinated missile strikes, ripping its armor apart like paper. Then the unexpected happened. The coalition of Prime moved. They weren't attacking Earth. They were attacking the Valoran and Cruiseri fleets. A cold realization spread through the galactic spectators. The coalition had switched sides. They had calculated the battlefield, assessed the probabilities, and determined that the humans had a better chance of winning. Carter watched as the once allied fleets turned against each other, the Valoran and Cruiseri forces struggling to respond. He knew the coalition wasn't here to be friends. They were here to win. And right now, betting on the underdogs seemed like the smartest move. The battle was shifting once more, and Earth was no longer fighting alone. The battlefield had erupted into chaos. What was once a united front against Earth's fleet had turned into a three-way war. The Valoran and Cruiseri, blindsided by the coalition of Prime's sudden betrayal, were struggling to regain control. But Carter knew better than to celebrate too soon. "Stay sharp," he ordered. "The coalition isn't our ally. They're just betting on the side they think will win." Lieutenant Patel nodded, her eyes locked onto the tactical display. "We should hit the Valoran while they're distracted. Their right flank is exposed." Carter was already ahead of her. "All ships, target the Valoran fleet's outer formation. Hit them hard and fast. Keep the coalition between us and the Cruiseri." Earth's fleet surged forward, railguns and missile batteries firing in perfect coordination. Valoran ships, still scrambling to adjust their strategy, were caught off guard. One of their heavy cruisers took a direct hit to its thrusters, sending it spiraling out of control. Another ship, its shields already weakened, was torn apart by concentrated railgun fire. The once mighty Valoran armada was beginning to collapse. Admiral Drex's voice came through the open comms, filled with barely contained rage. "You treacherous scum, you dare turn against the Valoran Empire." Admiral Vela of the coalition responded with icy indifference. "Treason implies loyalty. We serve victory, nothing more." Carter smirked. The coalition was predictable. They followed cold logic, and right now, the numbers favored Earth. But that didn't mean they wouldn't turn on him the second things changed. "Sir, incoming message from Admiral Vela," Paddle reported. "Put it through." Vela's hologram flickered to life. A tall, reptilian figure with piercing silver eyes. Her expression was unreadable. "Commander Carter, your tactics are unconventional." "I'll take that as a compliment," Carter replied. "Let me guess. You want a temporary alliance." Carter's smirk returned. "Oh, I'm counting on that." The executor stilled. "What?" Carter leaned in. "You don't get it, do you? We're done playing defense. We've spent too long waiting for the next attack, for the next invasion. That ends today." The Earth fleet wasn't stopping. The coalition's once mighty armada was being systematically erased from existence. And then Carter dropped the final blow. "This is just the beginning," he said. "Tell your people, Malvash, Earth isn't hiding anymore. We're coming for you. The transmission cut off. And across the battlefield, the galaxy's finest lay in ruins. The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't the silence of victory, nor was it the eerie quiet of space after battle. It was the silence before a storm. On the bridge of the Ulysses, Carter watched the last remnants of the once mighty coalition fleet burn in the darkness. Earth's forces had not just won the battle. They had sent a message that the coalition would never forget. Kim's voice broke the quiet. "Sir, we're picking up new transmissions, all across coalition space." Carter turned to her. "What kind of transmissions?" Patil checked her console. "They're outer colonies. They're military strongholds. Their homeworld." She looked up, eyes sharp. "They're panicking." Carter allowed himself a small smirk. Good. Malvash had underestimated humanity. He had thought Earth was weak, an easy conquest. He had believed that his armada, the greatest in the galaxy, would crush them with ease. But instead, he had been humiliated. And now, the entire galaxy was watching. A new signal flashed on the comms display. Patil frowned. "It's Malvash. He's demanding another conversation." Carter chuckled. Now he wanted to talk. "Put him through." The High Executor's face appeared again, but this time, he wasn't calm. The anger was there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was mixed with something else. Unease. "You have no idea what you've done," Malvash said, his voice low. Carter leaned forward. "I think I have a pretty good idea." Malvash's hands tightened into fists. "Your actions today will have consequences beyond your understanding. The coalition does not tolerate defiance." Carter's smirk didn't waver. "I know. That's why I made sure there won't be a coalition left to do anything about it." Malvash's eyes widened slightly. The realization was sinking in. Carter continued, his voice sharp. "You thought Earth was alone. You thought we were weak. But here's what you failed to understand." He gestured toward Patil. "Patch in the open broadcast." A moment later, the transmission was no longer private. Every coalition world, every fleet, every officer, they were all listening now. Carter looked Malvash dead in the eyes. "Earth is not alone. We never were. And now we're taking the fight to you." A ripple of stunned silence followed. Malvash's throat worked, his mind scrambling for a response. Carter didn't wait for one. He continued, his voice carrying across every coalition system. "You call yourselves the strongest force in the galaxy. But today, a handful of so-called underdogs outsmarted you, outmaneuvered you, and broke your armada apart." His gaze hardened. "So let me make this clear. The next time we meet, it won't be because you came to conquer us. It'll be because we're coming for you." He cut the transmission. For a moment, the bridge was silent once more. Then Kim exhaled, shaking her head. That was one hell of a declaration. Carter nodded. It needed to be said. Patil grinned. "So what's next, sir?" Carter looked at the battlefield one last time. Then, with a slow smile, he turned toward the stars. "Now," he said, "now, we go hunting." Carter leaned back, tapping the screen on his console. "You see, while we were fighting the Cruiseri, I had my engineers working on something. A little insurance policy." Kim smirked. "It's already in place, sir." Vela's patience was wearing thin. Enough games, human. Carter's smile widened. "Fine, let me show you." He pressed a single button. The coalition fleet's engines flickered, then failed. Across the battlefield, coalition ships began losing power, their systems shutting down one by one. Confusion spread through their ranks. Some ships tried to reroute energy, others attempted emergency reboots, but none could move. Vela's confident expression was gone. "What have you done?" she demanded. Carter's voice was calm. "Your fleet relies on linked energy grids to maintain efficiency. My engineers spent the last 2 battles infiltrating those grids, piece by piece. When your forces repositioned just now, you linked your entire fleet into one system. And we took control. Vela's jaw tightened. Impossible. See for yourself, Carter said. You're dead in the water. Across the coalition fleet, panic set in. Their ships were defenseless. Patel grinned. Sir, we have a clear shot. We can wipe them out. The bridge was silent, waiting for Carter's order. He studied the screen. It would be easy. A single command, and the most powerful fleet in the galaxy would be reduced to nothing. But Carter had one last move to play. Open a broadcast, he said. The entire battlefield lit up with his transmission. Every remaining coalition officer, every stranded ship, every soldier still watching in disbelief heard his voice. This is Commander Carter of Earth's fleet, he said, his tone steady. Your ships are powerless. Your commanders have failed you. Your empire is not as invincible as they told you. He let the words sink in. Then his voice grew sharper. You have two choices. Surrender now and live, or resist and be wiped out. Silence. Then, one by one, coalition ships began signaling surrender. The war was over, and Earth's underdogs had just outsmarted the finest fleet in the galaxy. The silence of victory was unlike the silence of war. It was heavier, deeper. Across the battlefield, wreckage floated in the void, the remains of the Cruzari and the coalition ships that had been caught in the chaos. The once mighty coalition fleet now sat powerless, its weapons disabled, its commanders humiliated. Carter leaned back in his chair, staring at the display before him. They had done it. Earth's fleet, the so-called underdogs, had just brought an empire to its knees. But the fight wasn't over yet. Sir, Paddle said, her voice cautious. We're getting direct hails from multiple coalition captains. They want to negotiate their surrender terms. Carter exhaled. Put them through. The holograms of 3 coalition commanders flickered into view. Their uniforms were pristine, their expressions carefully neutral, but their eyes showed fear. One of them, a reptilian officer with golden scales, was the first to speak. Commander Carter, he said slowly, this situation is unprecedented. The coalition has never faced such a... He hesitated, as if choking on the words. Such a defeat. Carter crossed his arms. Then maybe your leaders should have fought twice before underestimating us. The reptilian officer grimaced. The second commander, a tall, pale-skinned alien with dark ridges along his brow, cleared his throat. We are prepared to offer a truce. Carter raised an eyebrow. A truce. The third commander, a feline-like alien with sharp green eyes, nodded. Yes. If you allow our forces to withdraw, we will ensure the coalition does not retaliate against Earth. Carter chuckled. You expect me to believe that? The feline commander's ears flattened. It is the best offer you will get. Patel shot Carter a look, her fingers hovering over the tactical controls. The message was clear. They could finish this. Earth's fleet had the upper hand. They could destroy the coalition ships right here, right now. But Carter didn't answer right away. His mind was working through the possibilities. He knew the coalition. If they left now, they would return stronger, angrier. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about sending a message. He turned to Kim. How's our power situation? Kim checked her console. We've taken damage, but our weapons and shields are still operational. We could keep fighting if we had to. Carter nodded slowly. Then he looked at the coalition commanders.